Welcome to the StoryField. This is Josh Allen, and I'm joined by Micah Petrie. This is a podcast created and sponsored by the Allen Firm. At the Allen Firm, we think there are too many unknowns in life's legal situations. The Allen Firm provides legal guidance so you can make a great decision, come to a resolution, and be at peace. For more information about the Allen Firm, visit allenlawfirm.com. Well, we think you will agree that life is complex, business is hard, and living a life of faith can feel complicated. You're in the right place today to hear some great stories of normal people just like us who will inspire you to move forward in life. Thank you for joining us today. We know you're going to be encouraged. Hey, StoryField. So today we have Jeremy Davis joining us. Jeremy, man, thanks for making time to be on the show.
It's an incredible honor, and I'm excited and nervous and all the things at the same time.
Me too. So to be completely honest, I do have a little bit of a secret agenda for our interview. I mean, in addition to hearing your awesome story, I want to benefit personally and the people who are listening who are business owners, in an area that I think is extremely important, but it feels like it's really hard to make progress in. And that area is with employees and like organizational culture and kind of goals related to a few. So we have just the guy on today to help us with that. So a little bit on you, Jeremy. So you're the owner right now of two businesses, J.A. Davis Solutions, and that consults in staff training, development, hiring, culture, the stuff we're going to hopefully talk about.
Yes.
And I'm going to try not to jump just there. I want to hear your story, but I have this part of me that just wants to learn from you. So
he's excited.
I know I'm excited. So the other business is Davis Collective, and you guys are specialized as a group that specializes in marketing, media, mobilization. Just real quick, how does somebody connect if they want information on how to reach you in both J. Davis Solutions and Davis Collective?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media platforms. That's where we live, right? Everybody lives on social media and they live in their phone. So obviously you can find me at either jeremythecoach.com or jadavissolutions.com. They both direct you to the same place. And then there actually will be able to connect with all the things.
Okay.
I guess it sounds kind of self-centric, Jeremy-centric.
No, it's good. So, okay. So go there and you can find you there and the Davis Collective.
It's LinkedIn.
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram, not Twitter. I'm not quite hip enough for Twitter. Not just yet.
Okay. That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy has been in ministry for 10 years and been in leadership, for the last 17. And you were the former lead pastor of Life.Church campus in Fort Worth, which for you who may not know, that was the church founded by Craig Rochelle in Oklahoma and currently has 40 campuses and reaches 65,000 people weekly. I'm just blown away by that still. So we're going to ask you about that. And you're also a realtor now, a new thing with a League Real Estate in Fort Worth, a good group. And best for last, you married your college sweetheart, Heather, 15-year married and have two amazing daughters.
Yeah.
11 and 8-year-old. So how'd that sound?
Well, that's me in a nutshell, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into it then. So we want to know, started from childhood. We want to know, tell us about growing up. Where'd you grow up? What was that like? Family?
Yeah. So I am a third generation pastor's kid. So I couldn't run from it if I wanted to. I tried, and we'll get into that as we go into my story. But I was born in Detroit, Michigan, Motor City. Back when it used to matter, those of you that are business people, my social security number starts with the 3. That was back when it was regional. And so that's my only claim that I'm from Detroit, saying Motown.
Yeah.
Pistons. Can't really say anything about the Lions because they're garbage. Sorry for my Michiganders listening right now or watching. But I'm very proud of my heritage, and we'll go into that as well because I come from a ministry background and most importantly, a music ministry background. So you had the Winans and CC and BB and all these big gospel artists that come out of Detroit, and then obviously Berry Gordy and all that. But when I was 3 years old, my family, my dad, my mom, and my 2 older brothers, so I'm one of 4 boys, they kept trying for a girl, and my dad was only shooting out boys. So apparently us guys, we control that, I guess. I don't know. So I guess if I keep trying, Micah, I'm going to have another girl. So that's why I'm going to stop at 2. We got man defense right now. I'm already $100,000 into weddings, so I'm going to stop. But anyways, 1 to 4 boys.
Yo, real quick.
Yeah.
I read a book one time that, I mean, this is totally inappropriate, but
it's all good.
Like, it all depends on how the action's happening, on whether that boy or girl happens.
So my dad was not creative, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm just saying. That's what the book says.
Yeah, it's true. He kept on. I mean, it's like, what's the definition of insanity? My dad's name is Willie, and he just couldn't. Yeah, my name was actually supposed to be Angelique. So I was the third, and so they were doing a word of faith, name it and claim it. Like, this is a girl. We know, we prayed, it's a girl. And then I came out, and I'm the biggest of the 4 boys. I'm 6'2", currently today 300 pounds. But all my brothers are like 5'9" and under. And so,
yeah.
So I am the 3rd born son into a ministry family. Came to Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Actually, we moved there from my dad to go to Rhema Bible College. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but while he was there going to Rhema, he actually got connected in a ministry with a pastor who's no longer that's a whole different conversation. The church was called Higher Dimensions, and his name was Carlton Pearson. And so my family helped founded that church, and it actually brought in T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, all the big gospel preachers that you can think of. This was back in the 80s and the early 90s. And so I was a part of that movement. Actually, funny story is Mike Todd, who's with Transformation Church, he and I grew up together at that church. And so now he's everywhere. And
man, I actually listened to his book last month, and the story about him getting in the arena.
Yes.
I mean, that blows my mind. That's incredible.
So Tulsa is a weird Bermuda Triangle of ministry. And so we were there, we grew up together, and that church blew up. It was one of the first big multicultural, multi-denominational churches in the Midwest. And so that's how my foundation was started. And my dad was the worship pastor, and actually Mike Todd's mom and dad were in my dad's choir. So crazy.
So was he the worship pastor for the church that Mike took over?
So what's funny is Transformation Church was our executive pastor giving it to Mike Todd.
Oh, okay.
So
wow.
It's crazy how that connection is. So Gary McIntosh was the executive pastor of Higher D. So my dad was on staff with the founder of Transformation Church, used to be Greenwood Christian Church in Tulsa. The history is crazy. We could spend the whole time just on that.
Yeah.
And actually that's part of the reason why my story is the way it is because growing up in the pastor's home, growing up in a big mega church, one of the big mega churches earlier on in the 80s and 90s, having all the big conferences and stuff. Unfortunately, by the time I was in 4th grade, my parents' marriage dissolved, and it seeded a level of frustration that really kind of led to my decline in my faith. So I always tell people the fact that I'm a minister and I'm a spiritual leader in the city is a God thing, because when a lot of people, they get de-churched, I got far enough away from God to become unchurched. So from 4th grade, I'm talking, 11 years old, all the way until my 5th year in college, which would be, by the time I was in my 20s, I was walking away from the Lord.
Did your parents' ministry, kind of fall apart at the same time too, or how did that work on the ground?
So my dad's a worship pastor, been a worship pastor now for over 40 years. My mom was in Christian performing arts. And so I grew up in the arts. When Michael was talking about, hey, this is what you're going to do, you get your points and communication and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, I grew up doing this stuff. So actually, I'm more equipped to do what I'm doing with you guys on this call and communicating and videos and teaching and all that than I am for anything. But my mom is in Christian performing arts. So all of us grew up singing and dancing. I'm a drummer. My older brother's a drummer. Both my younger brother and my brother above me, they're both singer-songwriters and piano, guitar, production, all that. And so I always say that my brothers were really gifted and I was the white sheep of my family. You guys will get that in a second. You'll catch up. Mikey got it. Mikey got it.
Yeah.
But I was one that, I was really impacted because I was in that impressionable time of my age when my parents got a divorce. I blamed God. I blamed the church. I was suspicious of pastors. We lost everything. We lost our influence. Our family was still in the same city, and Tulsa is big, but it's not big enough for us to hide. So, I went through a lot of pain through that situation. And so I built up a bit of anger and bitterness. And so I walked away. I didn't want to have anything to do with church, ministry. All my brothers stayed and still doing ministry and doing stuff at a church. And I decided I was just going to be a football player. So from 4th and 5th grade all the way up, I started playing football and focusing on that, really not looking at God or church or ministry or anything. And I played at a school in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a top 10 school and for football in the country. It was Union High School out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Actually, I played against Jinx High School in the year 1999, and we played in front of 43,000 people in high school football game. This was before it was every week, like it is in Texas. It's just like that every week in Texas. But
that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you were just super talented. What position did you play? Like where was your role on the field?
Yeah, so what's cool about my story is God always lets me learn things for 3 years, and then he promotes me. Like I don't ever get a shortcut. And so it's the same way in life and in sports. So my freshman, sophomore, junior in high school, I was playing strong safety. And then my senior year, we had a shakeup in the coaching staff, and I got shuffled to the bottom of a roster. And they said, well, you can either play defensive line or you can be a backup strong safety. And I was like, well, I want to play. So I went after D-line. So I was strong safety to D-line. Those of you that know football know that's not normal, right? I went from standing up, being a ball hawk in the back, watching the whole field, to putting my hand on the ground right up on the offensive line. And when I tell you that I did not know that God made black people and white people that big, like I didn't know humans could be that large. Offensive and defensive linemen are some of the biggest humans on the planet Earth. And so I only started 1 year at defensive end, and I ended up having 110 tackles and 13 sacks, something crazy. And we were state runners up. And I was one of 2 players out of this top elite team that got Division I offers. And I got a chance from playing 1 year defensive line to going to the University of Tulsa, where I met my wife in athletic study hall. That's a whole story right there. She's a D1 softball player.
Oh my goodness.
I got to play 1 year D-line, got a full ride scholarship to the University of Tulsa. Had the opportunity to play under 2 great coaches. One was Keith Burns, and then he's a great coach. And I worked Steve Cragthorpe. Yeah. So we were 8. We went 5-7, 1-10, and then 1-11 my junior year. And then we had the biggest turnaround in NCAA history. We went from 1-11 my junior year to 8-4 my senior year. And again, it took me 3 years to work myself up into the depth chart, because I think it's because I'm more hard-headed than anything. And it takes me 3 years. Like God wants me to go around the mountain a couple times. Yeah. And so it was the same thing in high school, 3 years. And then I became a defensive captain. And then same thing in college, 3 years of playing special teams and backup role. And then starting my senior year at the University of Tulsa.
For the turnaround team.
Yeah. And
wow.
Getting to play against Georgia Tech on the Smurf turf, Boise, Idaho, the Humanitarian Bowl in 2004. We got our butts whooped because ACC football is a little bit different than Western Athletic Conference football. But I always, it's funny when people ask me about playing football in college. I always say my greatest claim to fame is who I got ran over by. And so I get to brag, especially in us living in DFW. I always tell people, it's like, well, I got ran over by LaDainian Tomlinson when TCU was like 12th in the country. My freshman year, that was my first game, or first couple of games. TCU and LT came into Tulsa, Oklahoma, into our stadium. I mean, I think LT went off, and this was before he was living for the Lord. I mean, he was colorful. Let's just put it that way. He's not on the podcast, so I can't say stuff about LT. He's a great man now.
Did you keep that jersey with all the cleat marks in it?
Oh, his knee, actually. It was his knee. I caught him on the edge, and it was in the rain, and I thought I was going to wrap him up, and I caught his knee 3 or 4 times on the way out the sideline. So it's funny because at a recent TCU event, I actually met him. I ran back into him, and I said, "Hey, you may not remember me, LT, but your kneecap does." So and then I was like, "Do you remember playing Tulsa in 2000?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that game. I went for like 350. I'm like, "You sure did." So I got to play against a lot of great players, but the greatest thing about college, it was not just the football experience, man. Getting my education paid for, it was something that was a dream. Being a pastor's kid, we didn't have 150 grand to go to college. And so anybody that's listening, I always hear people say that's not something to aspire to. Not everybody gets to go to college and get it paid for. Well, here's the deal. This little PK that only started 1 year, who had great work ethic, technique, and was coachable, got a $100,000 scholarship, 5 years paid for, room and board, book, all of that stuff, just to play a game. And that game taught me a lot about life and leadership and teamwork and all the things that I get to do now. But the greatest thing that I got out of that, not football, not the degree, was that beautiful little girl from Southern California that I met in athletic study hall. And I would have married her after freshman year, but she wanted to take me on a victory lap, just like Jesus does. Made me take 3 years until I finally wore her down or won her over, whichever.
I love that you have the pattern already figured out.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it comes to mind too, and just talk about it for a second, Jeremy. You weren't exactly pursuing the Lord. It doesn't seem like, even in the time, that was just a gift. I mean, talk on that, because I think people need to hear, like, yeah, you're a pastor's kid. You were close to the Lord. Of course he's going to do this, but that wasn't your stance at the time when he blessed you with the turnarounds and after the 3 years and then the scholarship.
Yeah. So going around that mountain, man, I always say, like, I did enough to qualify myself as your pastor. When people say, did you go to seminary or did you do X, Y, and Z? And I was like, no, but I did everything that you did and everything that you thought about doing. And I know that will kill you, and I always say, like, if sin isn't fun, then you ain't doing it right. And what God saved me from and what God saved me for, I look back on that time when I was young and angry and just far from the Lord, and just, people, everybody has a different story. Like, it doesn't always have to be so rugged. Like, I say that I went crazy, but like, I still had a tether. My parents were still in town. So, I didn't quite go as hard as some of my teammates did, but I definitely wasn't in church every weekend when I wasn't playing games. I wasn't in FCA in college. I didn't leverage my platform as being a follower of Christ to impact my teammates. Like, hindsight, I'm looking back, I'm like, man, I had so much influence. And if I would have just had this one conversation, I'm 40 now, I'll be 41 this year. And I look back on some of my teammates and I'm just like, man, if I could have just been that light for them back in 2002, when we were sitting in the calf, man, what their life might look different today. And so I did enough, like I said, to qualify and disqualify myself as a spiritual leader, but I also know that God still had his hand on my life, even while I was there. So.
Yeah. Well, back up just a minute. Tell me about, like, from 4th grade, with the divorce, who are you living with? How about your brothers and all that? And also encourage somebody who's going through that, who may have kids to do that. Like, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say, just because your parents' relationship didn't work out doesn't mean that you can't ever have a great relationship. And that was the first thing that was colored in me, is when my parents, I was like, well, man, if my parents can't stay married, then what am I going to do? Like, they have this ministry, they got these 4 kids, and it still didn't work out. Being married now for 15 years, now I was like, oh, I see how that could happen without work and intentionality in Jesus. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's how that could happen. Like, anybody that's been married for any amount of time, don't lie and say that you've never, like, you know what, I could get a lawyer. Matter of fact, I know one. I know a lawyer right now.
I'm sorry, we don't do a whole lot of family law. I just can't help you on that. There's our disclaimer.
But you know somebody.
Yeah.
But I would say, I lived with my mom, me and my younger brother. So my older brothers, my brother above me is 7 years older than me, and then the brother above that's 9 years older than me. So they were older. So if I'm, 10, 11 at that time, they're 16 and 18. So they were out of high school. And so they were, actually my dad was on tour with a Christian artist. His name was Carmen. And he was really big in the 80s and the 90s. So my dad was on tour with him the whole time. So after they got divorced, he was already starting to tour with them. So the church launched him into that ministry. So Carmen actually went to our church there in Tulsa. And so my dad was his musical director on his tour for about 7 years. And so what's felt so fascinating though, and this will encourage some parents and kids, like my dad was on tour, but he hardly missed any of my football games. He was always there. He was at my practices. I guess they were traveling and he would find a way to get on a plane and come back and be there for my football games. Like hindsight, like I have 2 daughters playing competitive soccer right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to get to all their stuff. And I'm in town, let alone traveling the world. And so my dad was an incredible dad. Even though he lost his marriage, I still look up to my dad. It makes me emotional just talking about it. He was still highly engaged in my life. And there was 4 of us. Yeah. And my 2 older brothers actually were on tour with him. My oldest brother played drums for Carmen, and the brother above me, between us, was one of the dancers on his tours. Yeah. And so what's fascinating is he still made time to come back and be in my practices. I remember still today practicing, and he would be running around the track the whole practice, listening to worship music and just jogging. So he was always there, and then he would be at my games as well.
So there it is, parents and dads' presence. That's what's important, being present.
And side note, Carmen was listed as one of the first Christian rappers, and then they had to change him to Christian music.
Right. Hey man, what is that? Hey man, they're sleeping on DC Talk, Micah.
I know.
Come on.
I just looked this up because we were having a bet on like when Carmen had his first first hit or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's a long time ago. And then when you look in like Wikipedia and some of the other things, they're like, oh yeah, he was Christian music's first hip hop artist. And I'm like, we also got a whole bunch of people.
We need a link to Carmen or something because a lot of something. Yeah,
because he's got some fantastic videos.
Yeah.
Well, God rest his soul. He passed away just a year ago.
Yeah.
After a long battle with cancer. But let's shout out to everybody that was a part of those tours because they would travel. They actually packed out the old Texas Stadium. And as a little kid, I got to see my dad on stage with Carmen, and I saw thousands of people come to know the Lord.
Yeah, he did years and years, decades of evangelism.
Yes.
Well, those were the guys,
ever, right? It's the most corny music ever.
But it didn't matter because we were all young back then. We were like, oh, that really ain't that bad.
Right. Right. That was dope.
But they were building that Jesus music documentary. I mean, that was all. I mean, they were building. Yeah, the movement that happened. It's pretty neat.
Yeah,
it's
man.
Really, really neat.
Footnote: your boy was a part of that. This is crazy. It's what God has brought us through, man. It still boggles my mind.
Okay, as much as in the football, the biggest turnaround. So as much as we're gonna have to have a part 2. As much as I want to, we got to move on. So after college, did you get married in college, and then or after? Tell us about postgraduate things.
I had to take a lap in my career and in my relationship with my wife before we got married. See, I'm telling you, man, like it's 3s for Jeremy, man. Like it's still 3s. So we graduated in 2005, but I was in my 5th year. So basically I was done with football in 2004. And my wife and I got married in 2007. And so what's fascinating is 2004 is whenever I found Life.Church. I was invited by a friend. So this is going to be a plug for evangelism. Anybody that thinks that there's no power in invite, I am literally the byproduct. The fruit in my life is literally the byproduct of a friend who passionately prayed for me, knew my heart, knew my history, and pursued me to get me to go to this random TV church where they were actually meeting in one of my old schools at the time. They were portable. And he said, man, you got to come. And I was like, bro, first of all, I'm not going to church. Second of all, I ain't going to no TV church. I hear the pastor's on a TV screen. That ain't even really, them people ain't even saved.
Oh, when was that? Was that
2004. So while I was in my 5th year, I visited Life.Church for the first time. And when I got there, that's when the Holy Spirit began his work to restore my faith. And it happened in a school where they were playing loud rock music for worship and they were eating chips in the sanctuary. Now, this is all stuff growing up in church, being a PK. I'm like, this ain't church. These people ain't saved. Worship was only 18 minutes long. The whole service itself was an hour. You know, growing up, my services were like 3 hours. But I was really struck by the hospitality and the joy that I saw in every single person. And I always say, from the street to the seat. From the time I hit the parking lot, I felt something. I sat in the chair and I was taken back by the loud worship music. It's like rock music. You know, my Christian white brothers, man, they love guitars. So they were crushing them guitars. But when I heard Pastor Craig teach for the first time, it didn't feel like he wasn't in the room and he was talking to me. Well, I had a love-hate relationship with attending church frequently anyway, so I didn't come back until 2005. So I went, we were in college. I was like, oh, crap. And here's a side note. My wife actually went, her teammate took her to a church across the city, across town, unbeknownst to me. And that's where she found the Lord. So she comes back to campus and she's like, I'm saved. And I was like, you're not saved. We just turned 21. You don't even know what that means. And she unpacked the gospel to me in my dorm room. It was on our movie night. Thursday night, we would get a Mazio's pizza and we'd watch a movie in my dorm room.
You mentioned Mazio's too. Oh, yeah. That's great.
And so she comes back and she's telling me this. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I guess we got to start visiting churches again. And I took her to some of the churches that were in the city that, you know, I had grown up around being in ministry, you know, Willie George Ministries over there at Church on the Move, and Sharon and Billy Doherty over there at Victory. There's a lot of great churches in Tulsa. I'll tell you, Tulsa is the Bermuda Triangle, literally, of ministry. She didn't like any of those. And I was like, well, I guess I could take you to this TV church. And of course, what church did she fall in love with? And I was like, I'm sure you would, because this isn't really a church and you're barely saved.
So you're barely saved. A reminder that every once in a while, we're still working on it.
Right. So in an effort to try to retain this girl that I had fallen in love with, we started attending Life.Church more frequently. And we can go into this part of the story when you're ready. But like, that's where God really began to capture my heart and chase me down. Is the more I had engaged in biblical community and went to the church and heard the word of God, something was brought back to life in me.
Yeah, keep going. I mean, yeah, I want to just talk about it.
Yeah, so 2005, we started going back more frequently. 2006, we started in our professions. So here's what's crazy. When we first graduated in 2005, my wife's a nurse practitioner today, but she was a nurse. So she was a nursing student while she still got records at the University of Tulsa. So she was like an all-conference, all-American hitter and leadoff hitter and all these great percentages and stuff. But she had a career right out because she had her nursing degree. So she got out in 2005 and started in her nursing career. And I was actually searching in my 3-year going around. And I was a musician, actually. So I was playing in bars and clubs. And actually, that's where I met one of the guys that was at Life.Church. He was out on one of my shows, and he was like, man, you got to come play at church. And I was like, heck no, I'm not going to play drums at no church. I'm just started going. Why would I play there too? And it was the friend that invited me, told me, it was like, hey, man, they're going to do a gospel Sunday. I want you to, I told Derek, he was the worship pastor at the time, like, you can play gospel drums on this gospel Sunday at church. And something prompted me, and I said yes to that assignment, and that was about 2006, and then the rest is history, man. I started serving on the drums, then we started attending more. I proposed to Heather in 2006. We got married in January 20th, 2007, in this Ice-Mageddon snowstorm of 2007. It hit Texas and Oklahoma, if y'all remember, and we had 130 guests risk their life to come to Tulsa, to the church that my dad was the worship pastor at, and we got married. And then in 2007, the first year of my marriage, while we were still trying to play around, we started being in church a little more consistently. I almost lost the girl of my dreams in that first year because I was still carrying all the baggage from all the sin and past hurt that we in our relationship building up in college. And just so you guys know, just because you get married doesn't mean you fix your problems. Actually, if you've been in a relationship before you get married, actually, it's time to really get to work. And shameless pastor plug, go to marriage counseling, premarital counseling. I didn't take it seriously and I almost lost my marriage, but God and his church. I remember sitting in Life.Church. Like I said, we were going, and it was in 2008. And Pastor Craig said something to me and my wife. We were sitting on the 4th row on the 2 outside seats, and it changed our marriage. It just launched me into where I'm at today. He said, in order to get what you once had in your relationships, you have to do what you once did. And I had recognized through all the hustle and bustle and trying to be a man and trying to find a job, and she's working, and insecurities, that I had fallen out of love cherishing my bride. And it was that ministry to me in my heart that helped me fall back passionately in love with my wife, who I had already fallen in love with in 2000 when I met her at athletic study hall at the University of Tulsa. So God worked through the local church and a pastor on a screen to inspire me back, not only to my relationship with my wife, a deep relationship that now has fruit, 2 little girls. And apparently if I continue, I'm going to have another 2 girls. You know, because I'm not going to change whatever position, whatever is why I'm having girls, Micah, I'm not going to change it. You know, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it.
Amen. Amen. Preach on that, Jeremy.
You know, I got 3 points. I'll go all the way in. But yeah, man, I really believe this, and this isn't propaganda. I really believe that the local church is the hope of the world, and we've gotten so far away from it because it's become politicized. It's become an organization. People have gotten distracted by the business side of ministry, but they forget about the fruit of being attached to a body, being discipled, being mentored. You know, like I said, I was not just de-churched, I was unchurched. And so I was basically like any other person that you and I would go to the gym or we'd go to the grocery store and we would try to evangelize. And I myself was evangelized. And now my 2 beautiful daughters who are 8 and 11, people everywhere they go, they're like, your daughters are so joyous. What is that joy? Like, they're so happy. And that's because they have a dad with road rash, but finally came back to the source, that submitted to leadership, serving everywhere I possibly can in multiple capacities. And I know we're going to talk about that. Who's madly in love with the Lord and madly in love with their mom.
Oh, that's good, man.
That fruit comes from a desperation for the lost, because I was lost.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
Man, that gives me chills just hearing that too. So thank you.
And Groeschel wasn't even all swole then either. He was all little.
He was actually kind of pudgy.
Yeah, he hadn't even worked out a day in his life and drank no protein, and now he's all like, "Oh, Craig."
Well, I'm grateful for his discipline. He's intense. Like what you read in the books and what you see online, he is that man, and he is that man of God. It's intense, man. The closer you get to the sun, the hotter it is. Let's just say it that.
Okay, well, so how'd you get there then? Because did you go on staff with the TV church then?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us
Life.Church now. No disrespect, you know. I always have a love-hate relationship with the fact that the place that actually helped restore my faith and almost pretty much saved my life became my job.
Yeah.
That's what fast forward. That's what gets me to where we're at today. Not because Life.Church did anything wrong, but like the reality of it is that was my sanctuary. But just like with anything, when you become a practitioner and then a master of it, then you want to be leveraged and used to help other people with that. And so as my life is restored and me and my wife are thriving, people begin to see the leadership that was seated in me since I was a little boy. Like my mom had been praying for her 3rd son since I was a baby, because you can tell I had the most energy. I was the most, let's just say, expressive, controversial personality is what we like to say. And she had always prayed that God would have my heart and have his hands on my life. And Life.Church had a spot for me to go be Jeremy, to inspire other people to not only get engaged in church, but to serve and to lead. So all those leadership things and principles that were in me, it was like I was going to church and I was receiving, but I was actually giving and I was actually receiving as I was giving. Leadership began to see that, and they're like, yo, you can't run. Somebody found out about my history, and then it was on after that. Because I never told anybody all the stuff that I just told you for those first couple of years of serving at Life.Church. Nobody knew about my family's history and They just knew that I was this loud guy that was excited, that used to play football at Tulsa and had a lot of energy and had a lot of leadership potential. And actually leadership started investing in me. The first book that they gave me was this book right here, Leadership and Self-Deception. So this book, obviously the Bible, but this resource was given to me, was resourced to me as a gift, as being a volunteer leader. And so I had one of the leaders, the pastors at the church, go through this book with me. And this was while I was, so the career that I actually got into, I was actually a licensed banker at Chase Bank. And so I was there before I was on staff at Life.Church. So I was Series 6, 63, state insurance. I was doing business accounts and loans and all that fun banking nerdy stuff while I was serving at the church. And so I would work 6 days a week at the bank, then drive to the church, set it up because it was portable, play the drums during worship, then be the captain to tear down the church, put it back in 2 semis. And I did that for years, just serving, all the while they were investing in me as a leader. You want to talk about real discipleship. It was real discipleship happening. And then in 2009, 2010, they said, hey, man, we think you should think about being on our team, being on our staff. Like, you obviously have it. You're Mr. Right. You may not be Mr. Right now, but there's a call in your life. You know, and growing up in church, I'm like, man, you say that to everybody. There's a call in everybody's life. There's not a call in my life. I'm going to keep making this money at the bank. I'm going to keep crushing it. You know what I'm saying? Me and my wife are putting 24-inch rims on her truck, just doing goofy stuff, young people, buddy, you know. And God captured my heart to that next level. It was 3 years. And so it was 8, 9, 10. And then in 2011, I went down for an interview and got onto the team as what's called a host team pastor. And so I transitioned from the bank. And I was on staff at Life.Church from 2011 until 2018. I served in 4 capacities, starting at one of the associate pastors. And by the time I got done with my tenure at Life.Church, I was the campus pastor for almost 3 years. And so I had a staff leading a whole campus of 2,500 people and across 6 services and all that fun stuff.
Okay, stop. Okay, you can't skip that much. That's too fast. Tell me just for a second, what was it like to make the jump? From Chase?
Yeah.
From Chase to ministry. Was that hard?
Yes.
Or were you ready? I mean,
no, you're never ready.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know until you get on the other side of it, right? But what I can tell you is because I was already being developed and trained as a lay minister, the switch in the title didn't change what I was already doing. So I was already leading a small group. I was already raising up leaders. I was already pouring up people. They just gave me a title and made it my vocation.
That's the thing about identity. Like, that's it. I think you've nailed it.
Yes.
Like, talk about that for a second, because some people think, yeah, I'm going to be quiet. You talk about that for a second. That's important.
Yeah. I mean, I know exactly what you're asking. A lot of people think that in order to do ministry, you have to work for a church. And the secret sauce, the code is like every single one of us. When I was at a banker, here's where I knew I was ready to be promoted to my next season. My first 3 years at Chase were hell on earth. Jeremy's lap. In the 4th year, while I was being poured into and developed in the church, I had gained so much influence at the branch that I actually had us praying in the morning at a bank before we opened the doors. And so that's when God promoted me into vocational ministry, because you're in ministry. Micah, you're in ministry. This podcast is ministry. Like, you guys have an audience that me as a pastor and most of us pastors will never have access to. And so how you live your life, how you lead is Jesus to somebody. And so I recognize that. I always knew that because I grew up in it. And then, you know, we were training pastors. We were training lay ministers. We didn't need you to come be on staff. Matter of fact, a lot of people are wasted on staff because you're just running the church. We actually need people like you guys outside the walls of the church to evangelize, to actually invest in people at a deeper level than any of us. So I understood that. Life.Church saw me understand that. And I don't know why in their code. I mean, I know why. They're like, hey, you should come over here. You're crushing it there. Come over here and start back at the bottom. You know, but when I got on staff, I took a 35% pay cut. And I went from having freedom on my weekends to me and my wife one of the main reasons why we stepped down is because we knew it was a time where our girls were younger. We weren't going to church at the same time. So for 10 years, I went to church before my girls went, and I left after them. So we never went to church together at the same time. And there's a way to do that. So don't hear me saying that if you work for a church, you can't do that. Like, that was just me needing to grow. I had to take another lap. I'm in year 4 right now, guys. Step down in 18. What year is it, guys?
It's lap time for you. I mean, it's time for the move, for the something. Yeah.
He's about to jump in the big pool
right now. But I'm telling you guys, like, everybody's a minister.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I did when I first got on staff at the church, I had 80 volunteers and across 3 services, and I had these little business cards made. And I said, all my business cards said Jeremy Davis, hosting pastor. And then I just said, your name here, minister. And I handed it to every single one of those volunteers, because I said, if I have all the ministry, then it won't be done. There's something that every single person has, older, younger, bigger, wider, smaller, different histories, that I empowered them to say, this ministry is not just mine. It's not just Craig Rochelle's, the wizard on the screen. It's yours. And ever since I was awakened, I've been trying to empower every single person that I come into contact with to be the light, to be the joy, to be the life, to be the encourager, to be the mentor, to be the mentee. Mm-hmm. That's literally my life's calling. And figuring out how to monetize other things so that I can stay focused. Because I always tell people, I've always worked my day job to support my ministry habit. Like, don't get it twisted. Your job is a means to an end. Just like you're a means to an end to them, your job is a means to an end to you. And so you don't have to have your passion, your purpose, and your pay in the same place. The reality of it is that your job is to resource what you've been commissioned to do by Scripture, is to go into the world and make disciples of all men, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So whether you clean toilets, I worked at Quick Trip for a year. That's the gap that you ain't hearing from 05 to when I started at Chase Bank. I worked at Quick Trip, which is a glorified gas station. Was playing in stadiums with 60,000 people. And then the first job that I had out of college, I was an assistant manager at Quick Trip. And you want to talk about humbling, going around that mountain? When I had to clean a toilet after a truck driver went through there, I looked up at the heavens and I said, Heavenly Father, why hast thou forsaken me?
You were asking for not 4 years of that.
No. But what God did in me, when we're going to talk about culture and things, like what God did in me in that season of understanding customer service, like getting cussed out about Colombian Supreme coffee changed my life in a good way. Like getting cussed out about something that I had no control over actually taught me a level of fortitude and customer service and self-awareness that, unless you serve the public, you ain't really work. That's all I'm saying. Like, you need to go work some grimy retail job to get your training. And that impacted me. So it actually played into my role at Chase, and it played into my role as a associate pastor at Life.Church, and even to this day, where I train pastors and leaders and run with executive and senior pastors and senior leaders at organizations. I can reverse engineer every single one of their staff, knowing, because I've worked at every single level of that ladder. I'm a habitual ladder climber, and being an entrepreneur is actually a stretch for me because I've always been an intrapreneur. I've always been someone that's been innovative within a system. And now I've had to come out and work with people like you, Josh, and help you guys build your system to house Jeremy Davis's.
Yeah.
Because I'm that guy. Like, I need to be told I'm pretty. I need to be given raises. I need to be intrinsically promoted. Motivated and all that stuff. And so all of the things that God did in me as a kid in 4th grade, going through divorce, playing high school ball at a top school, playing college, all of that stuff, God worked and redeemed all of that.
Gosh, that's great. So I'll talk for a minute about, because you were the hosting pastor, and then you came into Fort Worth and became the head pastor of the campus. You said, you breezed over that like in a second. 2,500 person church. There's so much there. Talk about that for a second. What was that experience like? And then let's get into culture stuff. Let's get into loving our people and the culture and organization and stuff. So, but you can't breeze over it that fast. You got to tell us what that was like.
So when I joined the team in 2011, I was going around my mountain. So from 2011 to 2013, I was serving at a campus that was portable. That one that I was serving at when I was working at the bank as a volunteer, I got on staff at that very same campus and helped grow their volunteer team from 80 to 170 by the time I left. And so that was recruiting, that was raising up leaders. I had captains and people that I can write a whole book on volunteer engagement because I was a volunteer and I knew what inspired me to work 6 days a week in my lay job and then drive and be engaged in serving and, inspiring people. It's a lost art, and I feel like everybody has something inspirational about them. I don't care.
I mean, that's one of the biggest pain points in churches, volunteers, and So you write that book, please.
Yeah, man. I mean, what's funny is I'm doing a lot of that work now. So, we'll get into that with the culture stuff, but that's part of some of the assignment is I'm helping to equip their leaders to see their gaps, see their gaps as ways to fill people, as opposed to seeing people as a way to fill their gaps. That was something that I've always understood when I first got on staff. And so I grew the team. I was promotable. And there was an opportunity. They were opening a second campus here in Dallas, Fort Worth at the time. So there's a Fort Worth campus at the time. That was the only campus that was in Texas. And they were getting ready to launch a Keller campus. And they were going to need to double their team. When they made that announcement, I was sitting there in Owasso, Oklahoma, just up the road from Tulsa where I grew up. And I just was like, oh, man, I got family there. And I feel like I'm supposed to tell them that I'll go. And I wrestled because I'm telling you, we had just got it all set up in Tulsa. We had just did an extensive remodel of our home. We had just had our first daughter. Life was good. And then here comes this disruptor. Year 3 going into 4. I'm like, golly, I'm supposed to just start running. I'm about to start back over. I didn't realize that me starting over in Texas, the church brought me down here in 2013 was actually my victory lap. And that started me. I started as a hosting pastor in 2013. By the time it was 2014, 15, I had promoted again within the organization, just growing in my leadership, raising up other leaders. I became an associate campus pastor. Then I took over the whole team from Robert Wall, our mutual friend, in 2015. And yeah.
I want to go back to something you said a little while ago, just real quick. I just want to reiterate man, there is so much you can do in ministry just by inspiring people to do things that you can see potential that God wants them to do, and they are clueless. The 4 church plants that I've been with, I mean, I'm an all right musician. I've been playing since I was like 16.
Yeah.
But I can play acoustic guitar and I can play drums a little. I can play keys a little, not enough to like play on a Sunday, but just enough.
Yeah.
But I have done more in building people, and I'm not a choir person. I mean, I'm not a choir teacher. I'm not a music teacher. I can't tell you how to do scales. I can't, go find a music teacher but people are looking for someone to believe in them, even if it's something they don't think they can do.
Absolutely.
And and like you said, I think that art of the church, if we could find people in the church that would just do that, it would be totally different, because of the business side of things has warped things.
Yeah. It's had its positive and negative impact. To your point, what you're saying is what we've all recognized as leaders. Hold on. This is a book that I've read that you need to read if you're a leader. It's called It's the Manager. A lot of the times, this book, the premise of this book, to your point, Micah, is a lot of times people are managing and they're not coaching. And so the reason why my website is Jeremy the Coach or J.A. Davis Solutions, you can type up either one of those and you'll go right to my page. In every season of my life where I was the most successful, I was focused on coaching the greater good out of other people and not just on myself. And so that's the difference. As ministers, as pastors, as lay ministers, if we're not looking at somebody's potential, the reason why I created J.A. Davis Solutions is because I'm a hopeless romantic and optimistic about somebody's unrealized potential, because somebody saw it in me and they resourced my growth and they coached me and they challenged me and they only prescribed serving opportunities that were in lockstep momentum with what God was doing. They didn't use me to accomplish something. They used that something to accomplish something in me. And that's literally my life's work. That's what I'm called to do. And I want everybody to think like that. That's not just a Jeremy Davis thing. That's a Micah thing. That's a Josh thing. That's what we should do. When we're looking at people, I always say it's a Neo effect for me. When I walk into a room, I can take in the inventory of the room and I can audit people where people are at. And I say, which prescription, what version or what dosage of me can I give them to help what I see God on, what's on their life? And I'm obsessed with it, man.
You can't grow a volunteer base like you did and get them all behind the mission unless you are. I mean, yeah, so that's your passion. I love that. And I actually wrote that down. Obsessed with unrealized potential people. I love that. And to focus on people with that in mind, it's incredible. That's the basis of culture. So get into that. So teach us a little bit, when we say culture of a business or a church, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think so. Everybody measures things objectively, right? Their numbers. And culture is one of those things that's completely subjective and it's hard to measure. It's more about sight, smell, what you feel. And the things that make a great culture is when people are intrinsically inspired and not just externally pressured. And the thing that motivates somebody to get up in the morning, it starts with you're having a strong mission and a vision, understanding where you're going and being very clear about how you're going to get there. And a lot of times there's not strong culture in companies because they don't really understand what they do. They don't understand where they're going and how they're going about doing it. What makes their process or their environment proprietary to them. And so when I work with churches and organizations, I'm just saying, hey, what makes you special? It's the same conversation that I have with volunteer leaders. It's the same obsession that I have with people. I look at organizations as one organism and I say, what makes this organization special? And what's going to inspire their people? Because everybody's not called to every single place. And that's the thing is you have to love your vision and your mission enough so that when you create your culture, what you're inviting them into has to be something that's inspiring. And it's not going to always be inspiring to everybody. That's why you hire very rigorously. You just don't bring anybody on the table. There's a talent war out there right now. And sometimes people are filling seats with warm bodies and it's 3 times as costly to bring somebody on your team that's not supposed to be there, that doesn't have the DNA, that is not a fit, that doesn't have the culture. So culture basically breaks down to your organization's core values plus your staff core values and how you measure those things.
Oh, that's good. So I have a bit of a quiz then. You're the only one who's received one of these on our podcast so far.
Thanks, Micah. You didn't tell me about this, bro.
Okay.
It's new to me too. He's breaking all the rules.
I know, sorry. Because I'm really wanting to learn. So 2 examples. The first one, I'm a small business with just a couple employees. Mm-hmm. How do I start building a good culture and really blessing my employees? I mean, I'm a small business, just a couple. How do I start that?
Do you have clarity around your why? And then what's proprietary in your how? Is there clarity around that? Because here's the deal. A lot of organizations, they're only measuring their outputs, their metrics. We got all these metric systems to measure things. But what kind of conversations are you having around collaboration or teamwork or empathy? Or somebody's, bringing awareness to those things, because that's the thing is who do you want your people to be? Whenever I was with Chase Bank, there was a certain disposition that they wanted from it. We wanted a customer centric focus. And so a lot of organizations, that language is not there. It's just hey, what I told you, what's my value as J.E. Davis Solution? I am a hopeless romantic. And I'm obsessed with people with unrealized potential. So if I had a team, that's what I would say. Hey, if you're not looking at people and if you're not obsessed with what they are and what they're not just yet, then you can't be on this team. This is who we are. That's how you measure the who we are and what we're about.
So that's even where it starts. I mean, how do you start building it? I mean, you have to have super clarity around your why.
Yes.
And who you are as an organization.
Yeah. Those values, man, like I don't see them enough when I go into people's organizations. They're not on the wall. They're not clear. If I ask somebody, if I walk up to and ask a staff member, hey, so what's your guys' why? What's your mission here? If I hear 3 or 4 different things, then there's part of your culture problem right there. Nobody knows where you're going and why you're going there.
Yeah, it doesn't create a big fire though, the culture, and that's the thing. Like it's hard to work on because it's not urgent.
Well, I'm going to quote a book that you and I have all read. It's like this, it's the difference between working in your business and working on it.
Yep.
And J.A. Davis Solutions, I created it, and it was funny because when I stepped down out of full-time ministry, every church keeps trying to hire me full-time. And I'm just like, I promise you, if you hire me, I'm gonna turn political and I'm gonna stop telling you the truth because I'm a high honor guy and I'm gonna go to sleep. And those golden shackles are gonna make me go into self-preservation mode. So it's like I'm literally fighting for people by staying out, because if I go in, of course, I could probably do the thing and I'd be able to write my own book and be like Jack Welch. And that would be awesome. But what I'm finding is there's not somebody that's looking at you, Josh, and saying, hey, man, like you guys are successful. You're doing a great job. But if your people don't know where you're going and why you're going there, then you got people that are working for you and they're employees and they're not taking an ownership stake in what you guys are trying to accomplish. And that's why we lose so many people. You get disengaged, you get disenfranchised, you're just a cog in the wheel. You're doing enough. You're doing just enough. You're not really that engaged. So having a dynamic understanding of your culture, of your why and your how and what makes you different, and being able to talk to people about that and celebrate when people do it well, that's the intrinsic motivators.
It's invaluable. It's completely and absolutely priceless.
Yeah, and it's not a book, bro. Like it's like it sounds like voodoo. Like most of the time when I'm talking to managers, like I don't have time for that feel good stuff. I was like, well, that's why you keep filling your roles, buddy.
Yeah, and the turnover is expensive. I mean, it costs a lot. Yep. Well, I kind of feel a little bit judged too. I'm like, dang it, Michael, we got Charlie. But
hey, Michael, he asked the question, man.
I know, Matt. Yeah, okay.
I mean, that was a good 10 minutes, and not just joking.
Yeah, no,
it just means it's gonna have to be part 2, and all we'll do is talk about culture.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but couple things before we land here. I know I can't help it. So, what's a good step? Okay, let's say you have some values. You have your why, and you're starting to communicate that. Like, what's a good step toward helping your people, your employees, like realize their potential and meet their dreams? If you've never done it, because a lot of businesses have been around forever, and it's not on their radar. Like, it's just not.
Right.
So, what's one good step? And it may not be anything big. What would you encourage somebody? Like, how do you just one step to make them like, man, encourage you to reach your potential and really meet their dreams?
Yeah. So, a lot of organizations, small and big, are intimidated by somebody else's passion. They want you to drink their Kool-Aid and then have you got to understand, like the biggest thing that was done for me is people realizing that their thing wasn't the only thing that was important in my life. And so whenever we go to college, most of the time they're teaching us how to be cogs and wheels and managers. They're not really teaching us how to ask intuitive questions. And you'd be surprised if you spent 1 hour a month and just asked an open-ended question like, hey, tell me what you're most excited about. What is something you're passionate about? And that would probably inform not only how you lead them, but some of their core motivators. And the thing is like, I had a guy that owns 3 restaurants. I'm not going to name his name, but he said, man, I don't know why these people are so ungrateful. Like I gave them this huge bonus and I gave them this and that and the other, and they're still ungrateful. And I just looked at them and I just like, well, yeah, man, you don't know their employee love language. That's not what motivates them. Like if you took like some creativity around each one of your people, and you can't go crazy, right? You can't give everybody 3 weeks off, but maybe this person just needs a little more flexibility. Maybe this person does want to understand how they can earn more. Or maybe this person needs to understand why they're not getting promoted, why they're getting looked over, and help them work on those key skills and attributes to grow so that they can be promotable. Most managers are not coaching. So they're not asking people what they're about, what they need, how they can help them. And it sounds like voodoo, and it sounds like one of those parables from a book, but slowing down to speed up is one of the hardest things for the top earning organizations and leaders and managers in every organization. And I can say that wholeheartedly. I mean, I sit down with some people that are crushing it, that have more drive than I'd have in 5 lifetimes, but they just can't slow down long enough for their people to just ask one intuitive question and let that person guide the conversation. And then you'd be like, that's what motivates that person. Got it.
I know it seems so easy. It's just caring, just caring and asking those questions.
Yep.
What does a win look like in the people area of a business? I mean, what does it look like for you? Like if you walk in and see a business and you're like, man, they're winning just because I see this trait. Is there something that kind of stands out?
Yep. When I see entrepreneurship, when I see people that are so engaged that they're helping to come up with solutions and ideas based upon the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization, they're not comparing you to another place and saying, oh, we should be doing this or we should be doing that. They're saying, hey, guess what? They're being creative within the framework. Whenever I go to an executive meeting and I hear the executive team and they're arguing with each other and they're standing their ground on points and there's not synergy, that's a whole bunch of employees and there's a whole bunch of selfishness in that room. And it's human nature to get defensive about your ideas. The greatest organizations have a table full or 1 to 2 to 5, however big your organization is, of people that says, hey, how can we solve problems through the lens of what we're trying to do with what we have? They take an asset-based approach, not what we don't have. They take the winning teams, their executive leaders are taking an asset-based approach to solutions. I know without a shadow of a doubt, like that's the kind of organization that's going to take the ground, because one person can't lead 1 million, 2 million, 20 million. Like it's going to take an engaged team. And I've had the blessing of working for 4 top, Fortune 500, 100 companies, starting with Enterprise and then Quick Trip and then Chase and then Life.Church. Someday I'll be a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
You speak it. A lot of the organizations that I've helped right now, they're really successful, but it's not efficient. So they're getting there, but it's clunky, and they're hemorrhaging out great people because they don't have that clarity and purpose. They don't have that clarity and vision, their value statements, and they don't take care of their people.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to get you back. We're going to do a teaching series. So if you had to give like kind of a summary of your life message, let's wrap it up with that. What would that be? And including encouragement to people in it. Like what is that for you?
As a follower of Christ, let me give you the 2, professionally and as a follower of Christ, which are both, but I want to give 2 because we've been talking about both of them. As a follower of Christ, well, let me do the business one first because I'm about to get emotional just talking about the follower of Christ one. I felt myself start to tinge up, Micah.
Don't worry. Remember, this is 1 of 8. So
yeah, it's okay. We'll keep it cold and still on the next one. Just make it real technical.
So as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a manager, I say anything that you can do to master the art of influence for coaching purposes will not only give your life more meaning, but it will also allow you to be seen as an ally to people. You never know what people are going through. And we spend most of our time with our coworkers and at work. And our managers, the people that are in leadership in our organizations, or if you're that person, I just want to encourage you to remember not to objectify your people. To really remember, it doesn't mean that you have to have kitty gloves all the time. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't be high accountability and intensity. That is not what I'm saying. Like if people that are listening to me, if they work with me or for me, they know I'm intense. But I also have learned empathy. And so my sum on the professional side is I write this down, type it. The greatest force in the universe outside of the Holy Spirit, whether you believe or not, is empathy. Anytime in our history when there's been a lack of empathy, then it removes all objectivity. And so as a leader, as a boss, as a friend, as a coworker, empathy is the driving force behind everything. People feeling like you understand how they feel. Because I'm not a feeler, and I did so long suppressing my feelings and not giving other people's feelings a seat at the table. And it cast me in their mind as a tyrant and somebody that didn't care about them. So that's one. As a follower of Christ, my hope and my prayer is that you guys that listen to my story is that you will once again be desperate for those that are far from the Lord. Because somebody was desperate for me to come back. And because they were desperate for me, because they were looking for me, they didn't let me just continue to go the way I was going. I'm taking my daughter to soccer practice tonight. So just remember, Brindley Davis would not live if it wasn't for somebody who was desperate for me to come back to the Lord.
Oh, that's good. Man, let's end it on that. Hey, Jeremy, that was really rich. That was good. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for
that.
that.
So grateful.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
One gospel song that everybody needs to hear after listening to this podcast.
Dang, bro, one?
There's so many of them. I know.
I know there's
the first
so many.
one? What's the first one that jumps out?
Yeah, because I don't think. I mean, like you said, there's enough rock and roll and Hillsong and all that out there.
Don't sleep on Oceans though.
No, I'm not sleeping on any of it. All I'm saying is there's so much of that old stuff that nobody goes to. Nobody, the Gaithers. There's all of these things, and why, I just for some reason it just told me to ask you, because I think you're going to say something that I probably don't even know.
You ever heard that God's Property album?
I think
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so the song here, hold on. This song right here.
God's Property, love.
Love, a word that comes and goes. People don't even know what it means to love. And I'm telling you, every season, this song will minister to you and remind you. I'll give you a second. Let this just hit. Let this sizzle.
See, I knew you'd have it. I knew you'd have it.
Link it up, Micah.
I'm going to link it up. I'm going to put a video in there. I'm going to put links to Apple Music.
Hey, man. Hey, listen, y'all got me all up in my feels today, bro. I don't know what you're trying to do. I don't know what this was, man. You got me all up in my feels today. Dang.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Hey, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Love y'all.
All right, buddy.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, this is Micah. Me and Josh would like to thank you for joining us in the StoryField today. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and to learn more about us and the StoryField, visit thestoryfield.com. This podcast is sponsored by the Allen Firm, legal guides for many of life's situations. To learn more about the Allen Firm, visit allenlawfirm.com. Have a blessed day, week, and year, and we will see you next time on the StoryField.
This is Josh again. I just wanted to thank you for listening and let you know that this podcast is really about hope and about giving you hope for your life. So if you're listening and you're in a place where you're really feeling hopeless right now, or if you do not know Jesus, we have some great news to share with you and would love a chance to pray for you. Email us at hope@allenlawfirm.com. That's hope@allenlawfirm.com, and we'll reach out to you soon. Thank you for listening. God bless you.